I thought I knew him. I thought 15 years meant something, that vows meant something, that the man who held my hand through my father's funeral wouldn't be capable of what he did. But I was wrong. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just lie. He systematically dismantled everything I built, everything I owned, everything I believed was ours, and he did it so carefully, so quietly, that I almost didn't catch it in time. Almost. When I finally saw the documents, when I understood what he'd been doing in the shadows while kissing me goodnight, something inside me went cold. Not angry, cold. Because anger makes you reckless. And I couldn't afford to be reckless, not when I was about to take back everything he stole and destroy everything he thought he'd won. I wasn't always this careful. There was a time when I left my phone unlocked on the counter, when I signed documents without reading every line, when I believed that marriage meant you didn't have to protect yourself from the person sleeping next to you. I met him when I was 23. Fresh out of college, working my first real job at a marketing firm that paid just enough to cover rent and student loans. He was older by 5 years, confident in a way I wasn't, already established in his accounting career. He made me feel safe. That's what I remember most, not butterflies or passion, but safety. We built something together, a house in a decent neighborhood, 2 cars paid off, a joint account where both our paychecks went. We talked about everything: money, dreams, retirement plans. I thought we were a team. I should mention that we never had children. It wasn't a painful decision. We both just kept saying, maybe later, and later never came. Sometimes I wonder if that made it easier for him. No one to consider except himself. For years, everything felt normal. Good, even. We had dinner together most nights. We traveled once a year, nothing extravagant. National parks, long weekends. We went to his company events and my office parties. People called us stable, solid. I didn't notice when things started shifting. Or maybe I did, and I told myself stories to explain it away. He started working later, but he'd always been dedicated to his job, so that made sense. He became protective of his phone. But everyone's protective of their phone now, aren't they? He seemed distracted during conversations. But we'd been together 15 years. Wasn't some distraction normal? The first thing that actually bothered me was the credit card bill. It was small. A charge for $200 at a restaurant I didn't recognize. When I asked him about it, he barely looked up from his laptop. "Client dinner," he said. I nodded. He took clients to dinner sometimes. But something felt off. The restaurant was 2 hours away in a city where none of his clients were based. And it was a Saturday. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid, controlling. Wasn't checking up on your spouse's every expense a sign of an unhealthy relationship? 2 weeks later, there was another charge. A hotel, also out of town. This time when I asked, he got irritated. "Why are you interrogating me? It was a work trip. Last minute. I told you about it." He hadn't told me about it, but I questioned my own memory. Maybe he had mentioned it and I'd forgotten. Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. I apologized. That's what I did back then. I apologized for my doubts. The third incident wasn't a credit card charge. It was a document I found while looking for our tax returns. We kept everything in a filing cabinet in his home office. I'd always had access to it. There was never any secrecy about finances. That's what I thought anyway. I was searching for a W-2 form when I noticed a folder I didn't recognize. Unmarked, tucked behind the insurance papers. I almost didn't open it. I wish I hadn't. Inside were loan documents. Not for our house, not for anything I knew about. He'd taken out a home equity line of credit, $50,000, against our house. The house we owned together. The house my salary had helped pay for. My hand started shaking before I even finished reading. The loan was 6 months old. He'd been making payments from an account I didn't have access to. The documents had both our names on them, but I'd never seen them before. I'd never signed anything, except I had. I remembered it now. Months ago, he'd asked me to sign some refinancing paperwork while I was rushing out the door to work. He'd said it was routine, something about getting a better interest rate. I'd trusted him. I'd signed. I sat on the floor of his office holding those papers, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt like I didn't know the man I'd married. Where did $50,000 go? I went through the rest of the folder. Bank statements for an account in his name only. Statements going back 2 years. Regular withdrawals, transfers, payments to credit cards I'd never heard of. My chest felt tight. I heard his car in the driveway. I don't know why I put the folder back, why I closed the filing cabinet, why I walked into the kitchen and started making dinner like nothing had happened. Maybe I was in shock. Maybe I wasn't ready to know the truth yet. He came in, kissed my cheek, asked what was for dinner. His voice was warm, normal, the same voice that had comforted me when my father died. The same hands that had held me through food poisoning and bad days at work. I looked at him, and I didn't recognize him. "How was your day?" I asked. "Long," he said. "I am exhausted." He went upstairs to change. I stood at the stove, stirring pasta, my mind completely blank. That night, I lay awake next to him, listening to him breathe. I thought about the loan, the secret account, the credit card charges, the lies, and I realized something that made my stomach drop. If he'd hidden this, what else had he hidden? I got up quietly, went back downstairs to his office. This time, I didn't stop at one folder. I went through everything. It took me 3 hours. By the time the sun started coming up, I was sitting on the floor surrounded by papers, and I understood exactly what my husband had been doing. He hadn't just taken out one loan. He'd taken out 3. He hadn't just opened one secret account. He'd opened 5. And he hadn't just stolen $50,000 from our marriage. He'd been systematically draining everything we had, everything I had, and moving it somewhere I couldn't see. The room started spinning. I heard him moving upstairs. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. When he came down for coffee, I was sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked. I looked up at him, and for the first time in 15 years, I lied to my husband. "I'm fine," I said. I didn't confront him that morning. I didn't confront him that week. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner. I smiled when he talked about his day. I pretended everything was normal while my entire world cracked open beneath me. At night, while he slept, I went through everything again. The secret accounts weren't just hiding money, they were moving it. Regular transfers to places I couldn't trace, payments to credit cards with statements sent to an address that wasn't our house, a P.O. box I'd never heard of. I opened it in his name. That's when I found out about the apartment, not a hotel for work trips, an apartment, a lease, $1,200 a month for the past 18 months, downtown near his office. The address on all those credit card statements. I sat in my car outside the building on a Tuesday afternoon, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. Because if I went inside, I'd have to know, and once I knew, I couldn't unknow it. I drove home and threw up in the bathroom for 20 minutes. That night, he asked if I was feeling okay, said I looked pale. "I think I'm coming down with something," I told him. He touched my forehead, looked concerned, brought me tea. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because I still didn't understand the full picture, and some part of me, The part that had loved him for 15 years, still hoped there was an explanation that wouldn't destroy everything. There wasn't. The next discovery came from my own bank account. I'd been so focused on what he was hiding that I hadn't looked closely at what was happening in plain sight. Our joint account. The one where both our paychecks were deposited. I started going through statements from the past 2 years, small transfers, 200 here, 500 there, always to his personal account, the one I thought was just for his business expenses. At first, they seemed random, occasional, but when I highlighted every single one, a pattern emerged. He'd been siphoning money from our joint account for over 2 years, not large amounts that would trigger alerts. Just enough to go unnoticed. $50,000 total, maybe more. My salary wasn't just paying our bills. It was funding whatever life he was living in that apartment. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I called in sick to work, spent the entire day in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how I'd been so blind. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Is this Mrs. Patterson?" I didn't recognize the voice. Professional, female. "Yes. This is Jennifer Hale from First National Bank. I'm calling about your mortgage application." My heart stopped. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your mortgage application. For the property on Riverside Drive. We just need to verify some employment information before we can proceed." "I didn't apply for a mortgage." Silence on the other end. "Ma'am, we have an application here with your name, social security number, and employment details. It was submitted 3 weeks ago." I couldn't speak. "Ma'am? Can you tell me who submitted it?" "It appears to have been submitted jointly by you and your husband. Both signatures are on file." I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. He wasn't just hiding money. He was using my identity, my credit, my name, to buy another property. I searched the address she'd mentioned, Riverside Drive, a small house, 2 bedrooms, listed price, $320,000. I'd never seen it before in my life, but apparently, I was buying it. That's when I started making copies of everything, every document, every statement, every piece of evidence I could find. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I needed proof. Real, tangible, undeniable proof. Because when I finally confronted him, he was going to lie. I knew that now, and I needed to be ready. The fourth revelation came from a place I never expected. His mother called. We'd always had a decent relationship, not close, but cordial. She called every few weeks to check in. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "For what?" "For being so understanding about the loan. I know it wasn't easy, giving up that much, but it means the world to us." My stomach dropped. "What loan?" Pause. "The loan you and David gave us, for my medical bills. $20,000. He said you both agreed it was the right thing to do." I felt dizzy. "Of course," I heard myself say. "I'm glad we could help." "You're such a sweet girl. David's lucky to have you." I hung up and immediately checked our accounts again. There it was, a withdrawal, $20,000, 6 months ago, labeled family emergency. He'd told me it was for repairs on the house. Emergency plumbing issue. I'd never questioned it. But he'd given the money to his mother, and he'd told her we both agreed. She had no idea I didn't know. Which meant he'd been lying to everyone, not just me. His family thought I was part of his decisions. I thought I was part of his decisions, but I wasn't part of anything. I was just a name, a signature, a source of income and credit. That night, I asked him a simple question. "How's your mom doing?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Fine. Why?" "Just wondering. Haven't talked to her in a while." "She's good, same as always." Not a flicker of guilt, not a moment of hesitation. He lied to my face as easily as breathing. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and for the first time since I'd found those documents, I cried. Not because I was sad, because I'd spent 15 years loving someone who didn't exist. The man I married, the man I trusted, the man I built a life with, he was gone, or maybe he'd never been real. I didn't know which was worse. When I came out, he asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said. And I realized something. I was getting better at lying too. I stopped crying after that night. Not because the pain went away, but because crying required energy I needed for something else. I started watching him, really watching him. The way he checked his phone constantly, angling it away from me. The way he showered immediately after coming home from work, every single day. The way he'd started buying nicer clothes, subtle things I might not have noticed before. A new watch, expensive shoes, cologne I'd never seen. He was dressing for someone, just not for me. I didn't ask about any of it. I just observed, took mental notes, kept my face neutral. At work, I couldn't focus. My boss asked if everything was okay. I told her I was dealing with some personal things, but it wouldn't affect my performance. That was a lie. Everything was affecting my performance, but I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because the moment I said it out loud, the moment I told a friend, a family member, anyone, it became real. It became a crisis I'd have to respond to immediately. And I wasn't ready. I needed time to think. Every night after he fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room with my laptop. I researched financial fraud between spouses, identity theft in marriage, how to protect assets during separation, what counts as evidence in court, how to freeze joint accounts, how to file a police report. I learned about forensic accountants, divorce attorneys who specialized in hidden assets, private investigators. I made lists. I created folders on a flash drive he'd never find. I opened a bank account at a different institution, one he had no access to, and started redirecting my direct deposit there. Just my salary. Not enough to alarm him immediately, but enough to protect myself. I told him my company was having issues with payroll, and my check would be delayed. He didn't even ask questions. The hardest part wasn't the research or the planning, it was the waiting. Because part of me, a large part of me, still wanted to confront him. To scream. To throw those documents in his face and demand answers. But I knew what would happen if I did. He'd lie. He'd manipulate. He'd turn it around and make me feel crazy for doubting him. Or worse, he'd disappear. Move money I hadn't found yet. Hide assets I didn't know about. Destroy evidence. No, if I was going to do this, I had to do it right. I had to be smarter than him, and I had to be patient. 3 weeks after I found the documents, I hired a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer, not yet. A consultation, 1 hour, cash payment, no paper trail. I brought copies of everything I'd found. The lawyer was a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, sharp eyes that had seen versions of this story 1,000 times before. She went through the documents methodically, didn't show much emotion. When she finished, she looked at me. "How long have you known?" 3 weeks. "And you haven't said anything to him?" "No." "Good. Don't." She explained what I already suspected. That what he'd done was fraud, that forging my signature on loan documents, using my credit without consent, taking out mortgages in my name, all of it was illegal. "You could report this to the police," she said. "Press charges. Would they prosecute?" "Maybe. Fraud between spouses is complicated. Some prosecutors won't touch it. They see it as a civil matter." "So what do I do?" She leaned back in her chair. "You have options. You can file for divorce and use all of this as evidence. You can demand full asset disclosure and go after him for everything he took. You can report the identity theft and force the creditors to remove your name from those loans." She paused. "Or you can build a case so airtight that when you're ready, he won't have anywhere to run. How long would that take?" "Months, maybe longer. You'd need a forensic accountant to trace every dollar, a private investigator to document his activities, financial records, phone records, witnesses if possible." "That sounds expensive." "It is." I thought about the money I'd started redirecting to my new account. It wouldn't be enough. What if I can't afford all that? She looked at me carefully. "Then you do what you can with what you have. You document everything. You protect yourself legally. And when the time comes, you tell the truth." Tell the truth. It sounded so simple, but the truth was ugly, humiliating. The truth meant admitting to everyone, my friends, my family, his family, that I'd been living a lie for years, that I'd been stupid enough not to see it. "Do you think I should have known?" I asked quietly. The lawyer's expression softened slightly. "I think he's very good at what he does, and I think you trusted someone you had every reason to trust. That's not stupidity. That's what marriage is supposed to be." I left her office with a plan. Not revenge exactly, just truth, documented, undeniable, legal. I hired the forensic accountant first. She was expensive, but I used money from my new account. Told her I needed a complete audit of all joint finances for the past 5 years. She found things even I had missed. Small business LLCs opened in my name, credit cards with my information used to book flights and hotels I'd never visited, tax returns filed jointly where deductions had been claimed for expenses that never existed. He'd been using me as a financial shield for years. Every piece of fraud, every hidden account, every forged signature, it all came back to me on paper. If any of this collapsed, I'd be the one held responsible, not him, me. That's when I stopped feeling guilty about what I was planning. At home, I was perfect. I smiled. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I became the wife he thought I'd always been, and he had no idea. One night, about 2 months after I'd started building my case, he came home with flowers. "I've been stressed lately," he said. "I know I haven't been as present. I'm sorry." I took the flowers, put them in water. "It's okay," I said. "I understand." He hugged me, kissed the top of my head. "I'm lucky to have you." I stood there in his arms, breathing in the cologne he wore for someone else, and I felt absolutely nothing. That scared me more than the anger had, because anger was human. Anger made sense. But this cold, calculated patience, this wasn't who I used to be. He'd changed me, and I didn't know if I'd ever get the old version of myself back. But I knew one thing. When I was done, he'd know exactly who he'd turned me into, and it would cost him everything. The meeting with the bank was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I didn't tell him I was going. I took a personal day from work, dressed professionally, and drove to First National with a folder containing copies of every document the forensic accountant had prepared. The loan officer was the same woman who'd called me weeks earlier, Jennifer Hale. She looked confused when I walked in alone. "Mrs. Patterson, I wasn't expecting you without your husband." "He doesn't know I'm here." Her expression shifted, professional mask slipping just slightly. I sat down across from her desk and opened my folder. "The mortgage application you called me about, the one for Riverside Drive. I didn't sign those documents." She was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Patterson, we have your signature on file. I know what you have, and I'm telling you it's forged." I slid copies of the loan documents across her desk alongside samples of my real signature from other sources, bank records, my driver's license, my passport application. "I'm not here to make accusations," I said calmly. I'm here to file a formal dispute. I did not authorize this mortgage application. I did not sign these documents, and I'm requesting that my name be removed from the application immediately." Jennifer looked through the papers. Her face went pale. This is a serious allegation. I know. We'll need to investigate. We'll need to contact your husband. That's fine. I have copies of everything. And I've already spoken with an attorney. That last part got her attention. I'll need to speak with my manager. Of course. I waited while she left. Sat in that chair in her office for 20 minutes, hands folded in my lap, breathing slowly. When she came back, there was a man with her, older, suit and tie, manager written all over him. He introduced himself, asked me to explain everything again. I did, calmly, factually, no emotion. I showed them the forensic accountant's report, every forged signature, every unauthorized loan, every piece of evidence I had. By the time I finished, the manager's jaw was tight. "We'll be launching an internal investigation immediately," he said, "and we'll be contacting the authorities." Thank you. I left the bank at 11:30. By 3 o'clock, my husband's office had received a call from the bank's fraud department. I know because he called me. What the hell is going on? His voice wasn't warm anymore. It was sharp. Panicked. What do you mean? The bank just called me. They're saying there's a problem with the Riverside property, that you filed some kind of dispute. I was at home, standing in the kitchen, looking out at the backyard we'd planted together 5 years ago. I did. Silence. You did what? I filed a dispute. I told them I didn't sign those documents. Are you insane? We talked about this. No, David. You talked about it. I never agreed to buy another property. I never signed anything. His voice changed. Softer now. Manipulative. Honey, I know I should have explained it better. It was supposed to be a surprise. An investment property. For our future. Our future. Yes. The same future you've been planning with the apartment downtown? The line went dead quiet. I don't know what you're talking about. $1,200 a month. 18 months. The address on all those credit card statements you thought I'd never see. I could hear him breathing. You went through my personal accounts? Our accounts, David. The ones you funded with money you took from me. This is crazy. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. We need to talk about this. I'm coming home. Don't. What? I don't want you here tonight. I need space. This is my house. No, it's our house, and right now I need you to stay somewhere else. He started arguing. I hung up. 10 minutes later, he was calling again. I didn't answer. He sent texts, dozens of them, explaining, justifying, demanding. I turned off my phone. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I went to the police station. I filed a report for identity theft and fraud. Brought all the same documents I'd shown the bank. The officer who took my statement was professional but skeptical. You understand that prosecuting fraud between married couples is difficult. I understand. And you're sure you want to pursue this? I'm sure. He took my statement, gave me a case number, said someone from the detective division would follow up. I thanked him and left. By Monday, David's mother called me. What's going on? David says you've locked him out of the house. I asked him to stay somewhere else while we work through some things. Work through what? He's your husband. I took a breath. Did he tell you about the apartment? Or the forged loan documents? Or the fact that he's been stealing from our joint account for 2 years? Silence. I don't know what he's told you, I continued quietly. But I think you should ask him about the $20,000. The money he said we both agreed to give you. I never agreed to that. I didn't even know about it until you thanked me." Her voice cracked. "He said you both wanted to help." "I know what he said. He's been lying to both of us." She hung up. 2 days later, his brother called. Then his father. I told them the same thing. Calmly. Factually. I didn't embellish. I didn't exaggerate. I just told them the truth. And then I gave them copies of the documents. His family stopped calling him for advice after that. The bank froze the Riverside mortgage application, opened a formal fraud investigation. The credit card companies started their own investigations when I disputed the charges on accounts opened in my name. I filed for legal separation. Not divorce yet, just separation. My attorney requested full financial disclosure as part of the filing. Every account, every asset, every debt. David hired a lawyer, fought the disclosure. But the court ordered it anyway. When the documents finally came through, they showed things even my forensic accountant hadn't found. Another business, another property, another bank account, and debts. So many debts. Credit cards maxed out, personal loans in default. The Riverside property was supposed to be an investment, but it was really collateral for money he owed people I'd never heard of. He wasn't just stealing from me, he was drowning, and he'd been planning to use my name, my credit, my assets to save himself. I sat in my attorney's office, looking at the numbers, and I realized something. If I hadn't found those documents when I did, if I'd waited even a few more months, he would have destroyed me financially. Not just taken what I had, destroyed me. "What happens now?" I asked. My attorney looked at me with something like respect. Now? Now his lies catch up with him. She was right. The fraud investigations moved forward. Creditors started contacting him directly. His employer received inquiries from the bank. I didn't have to do anything. The truth was doing the work for me. And slowly, methodically, everything he'd built on lies started to collapse. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in November. I sat in the courtroom wearing a simple gray suit, hands folded in my lap, while the judge reviewed the settlement agreement. David sat on the other side with his attorney. He looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. His expensive clothes didn't fit right anymore. He'd tried to fight everything at first, denied the forgeries, claimed I'd known about the accounts. Said I was vindictive, unstable, trying to ruin him. But the evidence didn't care what he said. The bank's investigation concluded that my signatures had been forged on multiple loan documents. The credit card companies removed my name from the fraudulent accounts. The police report remained open, though the district attorney ultimately declined to prosecute. Not enough evidence of criminal intent, they said, despite everything. That part hurt. But the civil case was different. The forensic accountant's report was devastating. Every dollar traced, every hidden account exposed, every lie documented in spreadsheets and bank statements that couldn't be argued away. The judge awarded me the house, full equity, my name removed from all debts I hadn't authorized. Reimbursement for every penny he'd taken from our joint accounts, nearly $70,000 plus interest. His retirement account was split, his business assets divided. The apartment downtown? It turned out he'd been renting it with money from a personal loan he'd defaulted on. The landlord had already started eviction proceedings. The Riverside property never closed. The bank withdrew the mortgage application after their investigation. David was left with debt, legal fees, and a reputation in ruins. His employer had quietly let him go. Not officially for the fraud. They couldn't prove he'd stolen from the company. But clients had started asking questions, wondering if the man who'd stolen from his own wife could be trusted with their money. The answer was obvious. His family stopped speaking to him after they learned he'd lied about the loan to his mother. That might have been the worst part for him. Not the money, not the legal consequences, but losing the people who'd believed in him his whole life. I didn't feel triumphant when the judge signed the final decree. I just felt tired. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, David tried to talk to me. Can we talk for a minute? I stopped, looked at him. He'd aged years in months, gray at his temples, lines around his eyes I'd never noticed before. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. I never meant for it to go this far. I studied his face, looking for the man I'd married 15 years ago. The one who'd made me feel safe. He wasn't there. Maybe he'd never been. You weren't sorry when you forged my signature, I said. My voice was calm, steady. You weren't sorry when you stole from our account. You weren't sorry when you bought another property in my name without telling me. I know. You're sorry you got caught. That's different. He looked down, couldn't meet my eyes. What happened to you? I asked. Not angry, just genuinely curious. When did you decide I was someone you could use instead of someone you loved? He didn't answer. I didn't expect him to. I hope you figure it out, I said. I really do, because the next person deserves better than what you did to me. I walked away. He didn't follow. That was 6 months ago. I still live in the house. Some days I think about selling it, starting completely fresh somewhere new. But most days, I like that I stayed. That I didn't let what he did drive me out of the home I helped build. I repainted the bedroom, rearranged the furniture, planted new flowers in the garden. Small things, but they matter. Work has gotten easier. My boss knows some of what happened. Not everything, but enough. She's been understanding, patient. I've started taking on bigger projects again, remembering what it feels like to be good at something. I joined a divorce support group, listened to other people's stories, some worse than mine, some different, all of them familiar in the way that betrayal is always familiar. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm more careful now, more guarded. I read every document I sign. I check my credit report monthly. I keep my finances separate and organized and protected. Sometimes I wonder if that makes me cynical, but mostly I think it just makes me smart. I haven't dated anyone, haven't wanted to. The idea of trusting someone that deeply again feels impossible right now. Maybe it always will. Or maybe someday I'll meet someone who understands that trust isn't given freely anymore, that it's earned slowly, carefully, with consistent truth over time. I don't know. What I do know is this: I survived. I could have ignored what I found, pretended I didn't see it, convinced myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. A lot of people do that. I understand why, but I didn't. I looked at the truth, even when it was ugly, even when it hurt, even when it meant destroying the life I thought I had. And I'm proud of that. Not proud of the revenge, exactly. I didn't ruin David's life out of spite or cruelty. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. I let the truth speak for itself. And the truth was louder than anything I could have said. Last week, I ran into someone who knew us as a couple. She looked uncomfortable, didn't know whether to acknowledge me or pretend she hadn't seen me. I smiled, said hello. She asked how I was doing. I'm good, I said, and I meant it, because I am good, not perfect, not healed completely, but good. I sleep through the night now. I don't jump when my phone rings. I don't check my bank accounts obsessively anymore. I'm rebuilding, slowly, carefully, on a foundation that's actually mine this time. The other night, I was cleaning out the last of David's things from the garage, boxes he never came back for, and I found an old photo album from our wedding. I almost threw it away. But instead, I sat on the garage floor and looked through it. All those smiling faces, all that hope. I looked young, happy, completely unaware of what was coming. And I realized something. I don't hate her, that younger version of myself. She did the best she could with what she knew. We both did. I closed the album, put it in the donation box. Then I went inside, poured a glass of wine, and sat on my back porch watching the sun set over the garden I'd planted alone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Not because I'd won, but because I'd survived. And sometimes that's enough.